Okay, so this training is going to be over our bulk oily water and what can and can't go into our bulk oily water. So I know that everyone has seen the signs on all of our bulk oily water tanks, whether it's a frac tank or just, the normal smaller tanks. It's got this whole long title on there. It says CG bulk non-hazardous hydrocarbons / rinse water / oily water / used oil for recycle. For short, oily water and used oil. This includes non-hazardous hydrocarbons in rinse water that we are going to take for recycle. Includes used oil, diesel, motor oil, hydraulic oil, and gear oil. So any of these, what we call hydrocarbons, are acceptable to go into our bulk oily water. What is not includes gasoline, coolant, food grease, cooking oil, chemicals, blood, etc. This liquid waste must go into a segregated tote or drum. You would not want to come back and offload into oily water with any of those substances. So we're just going to run through some different scenarios of when you should ask yourself, should this go into our bulk oily water or not? You're called out to clean up food grease spilled in a parking lot. So you go out there with your recovery truck, you clean up the concrete, you've got the liquid waste in your tank, and you get back to the yard. Can this waste go into our bulk oily water? No. So while it may say oil, like cooking oil, this is not a type of hydrocarbon or petroleum substance that can go into our bulk oily water. This liquid waste needs to be placed into a labeled segregated tote or drum. So just because it says oil doesn't mean that it's a hydrocarbon, so segregate it. Another example would be if you went to clean up a gasoline spill at a gas station. Same scenario, you come back to the yard, you've got it in your tank. Would you want to put that in a bulk oily water? No, that's gasoline, so it does not count as oily water. It has to be segregated. So you'd want to also put that into a labeled segregated tote or drum. Now, if you end up with any solids, like if you've got a couple of drums of absorbent or soil that have been contaminated with gasoline, then you need to let waste know ASAP, and you need to get a sample pulled ASAP, because with solids contaminated with gas, they could potentially be hazardous waste. And we only have, as a 10-day transfer facility at each of our locations, we only have 10 days to hold haz waste. So the faster you act, the easier it's going to be. Because we want to make sure we stay in compliance with our 10 days. So you want to get that sample pulled immediately and let waste know and get that sample to the lab as quickly as possible. And we would be testing for BTEX, which includes benzene and flash points. So is it flammable and does it contain benzene? So just a heads up, if you have solids, you want to get that sucker tested quick. And this is an example of a properly labeled gasoline and water tote. It's got the generator's name on there. I indicated that it was bulk from various locations and that it's off-spec fuel and water for recycle. So you'll notice I'm using this non-RCRA regulated waste label. You'd want to use one like that. You guys should have those on your yard. You wouldn't want to use a non-haz label or a hazardous waste label. Those are not accurate. It's a non-RCRA regulated waste because we're taking it for recycle. Another example, you're called to clean up blood that's on the sidewalk. So you got that in your tank, come back to the yard. Would you want to put that in bulk oily water? Definitely not. You want to put that into a labeled segregated tote or drum. Another example, you're called to clean up a sewage leak. You pump that nastiness, you got it in your tank, come back to the yard. Would you want to put that in bulk oily water? Definitely not. You'd want to segregate that and label it properly. And let's say that you're called to clean up pool chemicals that have been leaked onto a roadway. For example, this truck caught on fire, had a bunch of pool chemicals, they leaked out, so we came up and cleaned them up. You've got liquids from that. Would you put that in a bulk oily water? Definitely not. These are chemicals which do not count as oily water. You'd want to place into a segregated tote or drum and label it. And this is another instance, if you've got chemicals, especially pool chemicals, you would want to get a sample pulled immediately, whether it's a solid or a liquid. As we all know, pool chemicals like chlorine, muriatic acid, all of that stuff is haz. So you'd want to get that tested immediately. So don't let it hang around in your yard for a couple days. And a sample needs to be pulled within 24 hours of it getting back to the yard. So just to review, yes, can go into bulk oily water is hydraulic oil, motor oil, used oil, and diesel. No would be gasoline, sewage, chemicals, blood, cooking oil and grease, food grease. So just be real careful when you come back to offload. If there's any question, it's always better to ask. You wouldn't want to offload and then ask later and then find out you just contaminated an entire, truckload of 5,500 gallons of oily water. So, just watch what you're putting in there, and really adhere to these rules. We're doing it for a reason. So just make sure that everyone's on the same page with that. So now take your quiz, answer all the questions, sign and date your name at the top, and get that sucker turned in, and we will add it to your file. Like I said, if you have any questions, just let me know, and we'll address it at that point.